זה שיר פשוט, זה שיר קצר, אולי נשמע טיפה מוזר, אבל תדע, כי זו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך, והוא רואה, והוא שומע.
It's a beautiful day to jump into his word. Hello, I'm Charlie Brown, and you're watching the practical portion. Hello, if you're live watching from all the different places, or if you are on the recording and you're watching us later on YouTube or some of the other spots that we're at, I just want to say hello and welcome. We are going to hop into Exodus 21:1, 21:14, and the name of this parsha is Mishpatim. Mishpatim. And the Haftarah, or the prophets that we're reading along in this week, is 2 Kings 12, 1 through 17. And the gospel that we've chosen is Matthew 17, 22 through 27. And for those of you who are like me and you love to hear someone reading the word to you, it's nice to listen while you're reading it, or just sit and listen as you're going to sleep. We have a really cool thing to offer you over at the Rooted Cafe. If you go to therootedcafe.com and you click at the top and where it says the portion, we have every week someone reading that to you. And this week you have a treat. It's Lauren Cruz. She's an author. She's a host of a show here on Messianic Lamb Network. And she's reading this week's Torah portion. And it just blessed my heart this morning. And I woke up and I turned it on to listen to Lauren read the word to me. I was blessed. So I want to share that with you. Please feel free to share that site with anyone you want, especially ladies, if you just love to hear the soothing sound of a woman. Sometimes it's nice to hear another woman reading to you. So I'll speak to my girls out there. We also, if you're not aware of it, we have a very, very active band community of women living the Torah portion out every single week. We're discussing it. We're talking about Torah life. This is a regular free community. This is just a community from the Rooted Cafe ministry, and it's based on this weekly parsha that we teach, and it's thriving. It's a thriving international. We have women all over the world that are hopping in on there. We have pulled outside of Facebook, and we are now operating only on band for that specific community. So if you're interested in that, would you just give us an email at info@therootedcafe, KAFE.com, and just say, hey, I need the link. Otherwise, you can download the band app or go on to the portion, click over there. We have all the instructions on there as well. Anyway, just get a hold of us and say, hey, I want to be part of that. Okay. And the next thing I want to say before I hop in, I have so much. I hope we get it all in. Guess what? We probably won't, but I do have to tell you that She Prays registration is open. So She Prays is going to be live. We are going to be live on March the 26th. It's going to be an all-day event. It'll be from 10 a.m. to like 5 a.m. Eastern time. So, or 11 a.m. to, that's my time, 11 a.m. to 5 or 6 p.m. Eastern time. It includes speakers. We have our warriors teaching. We have Deborah Flanagan and Valerie Moody will be teaching main sessions. Misty Harbor is going to be doing a breakout session on praying in the depths, like getting into the marrow. How do you pray? I'll be teaching about praying to your children and how do we get close to him and praying and uplifting our children. Robin Lute will be praying from Beth Tikkun. Will be talking about praying through the tabernacle. I am so excited for that one. And then Ed and Hava Harris will be taking us through praying for your marriage. So it's a free conference if you attend live. We also have a live Q&A where all of our speakers show up at the very end. And for those of you who would like to attend that, you either need to be a Rooted Cafe member, which right now it's $9.99 for like the first month, and then it's $19 after that. So go check that out. But if you go to therootedcafe.com and hit events, click on the link about registering. It'll give you the options. But just so that you know, if you get, it's like $39 for a registration. If you pick that one, there is a free, which you should attend live, come be part of it, invite your friends over. But if you want the videos and you want to be part of that Q&A and you're not interested in becoming a member of the Rooted Cafe, we do have an option for you. So we tried to think of everything to help you out. So that's all there. It's going to be so good. We'll be talking about it a little bit every week because I really want you guys to really understand For me, I don't know about you. I would say I'm an OCD prayer. I start praying and I get distracted really easy. So this is something that I personally have been working on diligently. I've been working on it in the last few months, just really trying to focus of getting close and not being so distracted that's difficult to pray instead of just, starting to pray and then I'm off in la la land and I have to come back or I fall asleep, right? So, okay, here we go. Now, these are the Mishpatim. That is the way that this starts out. I think I should have probably opened my Bible because I have a lot of stuff to turn to this time. These are I'm using the scriptures version and it says, and these are the right rulings. And then many of yours will say, and these are the judgments. Can I present to you as this is a very one-dimensional understanding of what Mishpatim means, right? These are the Mishpatim. These are the Mishpatim. So if we look at the root of that word, shapat, the root, let's go there first and I'm going to come back to Mishpatim. The root of that word shapat is the shin, the pei, and the tet. We have the sheen. I'm going to build out a hieroglyphic, just a really basic one for you. And I encourage you to go in and really, we have the free course, how to, the Blue Letter Bible for Not So Dummies. Go in there. And we also have the course for free on how to study the Bible in the Rooted Cafe in the store. Go get that. So it'll show you how to do this. But I want you to take some time in yourself and go in and look up these letters. What is sheen? Sheen, I'm going to give you basic. It's that fire, that power of God. We have the fire. I mean, I love looking at trees because I see him. I see his name. It's like his name, but not everything. The power of who he is. The pei, the mouth, right? The mouth where where things are spoken from. And then the tet. The tet looks kind of like it's made, it's almost like a bowl, or they sometimes will say there could be a snake in there, but it's a bowl. It's the goodness, like a womb. That's why I want to talk to you about it today. We're going to see this because if these are red letter words, this is the Holy One speaking to Moshe. So I don't think he's talking about these are the things that will bite you, but they could. The contronym is that if you walk these out, it's kind of like your children at home and you're saying, this is how you live in our home. These are the rules of our home. If you abide in this, the word abides in you, whatever you ask. Okay, hyperlink. If your children are abiding in your home, they know the rules. And if they abide by the rules, things go well for them, right? So that's the beautiful hidden things. They receive the beautiful hidden things that are inside. But if they don't, that snake might come out and bite them. Why? Because it needs to bring them back into alignment, into where they need to be, not as a punishment as much as a course correction because they've gotten off course. So Sheen, we see this, the fire of God being spoken and being released, his power being released to the mouth to speak about the hidden goodness, this birthing of this greatness coming to them. And if we go back now to Mishpatim, what we change now is we just add that mem to the beginning. Mem to Mishpatim. That mem is adding that mem is to the beginning is that movement towards the waters that move us towards. Again, if you don't, the contronym of the mem is chaos. So you can see there's life and death, there's good, there's chaos, there's the right way we should go and a wrong way we should go. We can see how Hebrew is so beautiful because if you go about the way you should go, things will go well for you. You will receive the hidden goodness. You're going to be moved in the right direction. You'll be moved into his power. You'll be moved into the blessings proclaimed over you. You'll be moved into this birthing of goodness and the hidden things. He will share those secret hidden things with you. If you, then he, right? Isn't that how it works? So when we start a relationship, it is always a good idea. Any relationship, you guys will joke around. If you know me, you know that I'll say, okay, to be my friend, there's a couple rules. And one of the first rule that I ask for my friends, if a new friend going into that inner part where we're friends, we're covenant friends. I have to be worth the fight. I have to be worth you saying hard things. If there's something I've done, I need you to be able to say to me, this is not okay. And it be okay for me to go, to have an argument. I say worth the fight, meaning I'm worth you sticking in, even if it's hard, that we have those hard conversations. Sometimes friendships will be like that, and then they'll pull away. And you ask yourself, is this worth the fight? Is this where I want this? Is this where the Holy One's taking this relationship? What he's saying in here is you're worth the fight. So what I'm going to say to you, these are the hard things. These are the things, this is the what you can expect. And if you don't, these are the consequences. I don't think I did a very good job of this as a mom. I feel like I assumed a lot of things, and then what happened is when my daughter would break those rules or she would do something wrong, then there would be the punishment, as opposed to sitting down saying, here's if you do these things, here's the consequence. If you do these things, these are the rewards. I wish I would have done a better job at that, because I felt like the vagueness um, isn't comforting. I think of that tet, the secret things hidden and protected in the womb. There's a protection of boundaries and good fences, not the fences that the Pharisees and the Sadducees try to put around the word, but I'm talking about good boundaries, good fences that are around us that bring protection. Walls, how about that? Secure walls that bring, oops, my thing's all crazy, that bring us a protection. Okay. So this is a new community, or new community's just been birthed. So we have new rules. So they're calling them judgments, but these are the new rules, and they're needed so that they know what to expect. They know how to handle things. If you are going into a business with someone, or some type of a partnership with someone, a marriage with someone, it is imperative that before something bad happens, you set down the ground rules. And you say, if this bad thing should happen, this is the exit strategy. Or if this bad thing should happen, this is how we're going to handle it together. Because if you wait until all the bad things happen, guess what? It's too much emotion. It's too difficult, and everyone's against. But if you're sitting down, it's emotion free. There isn't a history. We're just fresh. Here's our contract. Oh, wait, that's what we call them now. Here's the contract. A lot of you, maybe you've leased a building or leased a home, right? Maybe you've bought a car on time. You have to sign a contract. If you pay this, you keep the car. If you don't pay this, we take the car away. So they don't just show up, they take the car away, and you're like, wait a minute, I didn't even know. Do you see, we have to have these things. And this is something that is kind of new, in that in our Western mindset, we have this separation of church and state. So this is interesting to us, and we feel like, oh, this is religion. This isn't religion. In Torah, there is no separation of church and state. These are right rulings. This is about not damaging others and how to deal with each other. If you look at it, for the most part, this is all about how to love other people, how to do the right thing. Because we have a group of people who've been immersed in a society that they weren't taught necessarily how to do the right thing, how to love when it's not easy to love, how to give, and how to literally, to the point to where it might be painful, to the point where you may have to sell yourself for a season into servanthood so that you can pay a debt back. Unto that, you're willing to make it right. Whatever it takes, I have to make this right. Because this is a covenant community that is worth a fight. It's really a misconception that this is really about anything other than that. That's not neglecting the marginalized and the justice for those that are wronged. Not about this holy one. Again, it's not about him making a religion. So if you can reread this section from the point of view that's saying he's giving you guidelines on how to love one another. He didn't just throw you out there and say, well, love each other. Good luck with that. And they're like, well, we've just been living under this Egyptian thumb and doing it that way, so we don't know what we're doing. And then them get stoned or fire coming down, and they didn't know the consequences. Kind of like I told you I did with my daughter a lot of times. So again, they would be positioned when they reach the promised land. They're going to be positioned to bring impact and influence to the world. It's not about them becoming this great nation that's going to overpower and dominate and have dominion over the world. It's about them bringing an impact and an influence to the world because they did things differently. They love like nobody else loves. And if you look again, and I will repeat this because you get to have the benefit of everything that I'm studying right now. And right now, as you all know, I'm deep into this geography of the Bible. And again, passing all those maps when I was a kid, like, oh yeah, I don't need to know this map. I don't need to know this. And you see the maps and you're like, oh yeah, I see all this. But if you look at where they're located, and you see the trading routes of the day, even today, everything's coming and going through there. Everything was coming through, going, everything coming over from Mesopotamia, everything coming in from Egypt, everything coming in from Turkey, everything coming in from the west. It's all coming in and it trades and goes out. So they would pick up and see, oh, wow, they treat their widows and orphans differently. Wow, I noticed this happened and that's not how we do things. And they would pick up an influence. We have a whole new idea of what that word means, right? For those of you who see they're an influencer in social media. It's different. They were going to be an influencer. That's not new. Nothing new under the sun. The Holy One set up Israel. He set up you to be an influencer in your sphere of influence so that people around you, around me, see, oh, they do things different. And is it easy? Absolutely not. It isn't. We'll say this. Is it easy? Yes. Is it simple? No. It takes work. It takes practice. It takes doing it wrong sometimes. And we're going to talk about how the Holy One made a provision even for that, right? We have Yeshua who helped eliminate the consequences of that death, but at the same time, we have an expectation to continue to go from glory to glory, to try to be, we'll say perfect. We'll go back, different word, right? We understand perfect doesn't mean don't do anything wrong, but you need to be like him. Be like him. So we start out talking about a bondservant and a reminder of their freedom. The bondservant was really about, I'm going to remind you that you once were a bondservant, because you're going to always forget that you used to be a slave. I forget all the time that I was a slave to the law of sin and death. I was a slave to the world, that law of sin and death, meaning I'm going to miss the mark and I'm going to die in nothingness. But I was given freedom to that. I forget that I sold myself to pay a debt. I sold myself to pay a debt that I created because of my missing the mark, because of my owing something. And what happened is I forget that I was redeemed. I forget that he came in and redeemed us. Jeremiah refers, again, we see the bondservant being set free in 6 years. We see that happening, reminding us of our freedom. We should see that hyperlink again of the creation story, the 6 days, and then on the 7th day they get to rest. The master frees us on that 7th day so that we can rest. So how do you become a bondservant? Do you sell yourself because of property? That's one way. You could sell yourself because I've damaged your property. I cannot pay you back for what I did. I can't pay you back for something that some wrong that I've committed. Or I am in poverty. I'm in such deep poverty. I can't pay this back. Those are the two ways. I'm in deep poverty, and it's a way of a social system. It's not giving a man the bread of shame. It's giving man or woman the opportunity to work for food, literally, not just with a sign. They literally go in and they actually work to build an income, and they have, knowing that they have 6 years or until the Jubilee year, right, that they can be set free, because that's a way for them to bring an equalization to the economy. Or you're the criminal and you're having to raise the money to pay the victims. And I'm going to come back to that in a minute, but isn't it interesting? We've gone through this parsha, together. Many of us have done this together for over 8 years. The doorway, we've talked about this doorway, all the different ways, but I want to just kind of throw something new this year. It was new to me and I want to throw it out there. We'll see what happens and what I hear back from you, and I'll continue to pray on it. But I just want to share something that came across my desk. Okay. So that doorway that the bondservant is nailing his ear to is that doorway represents freedom. And they place blood on that doorpost to say that they're leaving that slavery and going into freedom. There is a school of thought that from the sages, that it actually wasn't a good thing if the bondservant said, I'm going to stay. It's saying that he's actually rejecting the lesson of the doorpost at Pesach, at Passover. That he is saying, I don't want freedom. I want to stay a slave. The servant's choosing not to hear and obey the master, the great master, saying, and reject that freedom and stay with the earthly master. He wants to stay in a place of servanthood. Now, again, I'm just going to put that out there. Now, when it says forever, on there, I want to remind you that that is referring to until the year of Jubilee, just forever until he can be released. Forever, you look that up, but it's referred to as until the Jubilee year. That was a different way to look at it for me. I've taught it and I've sat in it in different ways, but I just want to present that to you as something to consider. What do you guys think? I'm interested in hearing back from you. So please comment on YouTube, comment now if you're watching live. Let me know what you're thinking about. Is this true? Is this a way of saying, no, I'd rather hang on to something I've created in slavery? I've gotten a wife, I've gotten children, I've connected to this lifestyle of slavery by making covenants in this slavery world, and I'm not willing to release it, so I'm going to indenture myself for longer. I'm not ready to step into that freedom. I don't know. What do you think? What say you? So we've seen Torah at times as being patriarchal against women. We hear that often. We hear a big argument, right, from many women. I've grown up, I'm moving into the expert of women in leadership as I study and as I grow in that doctoral program. But I see often in a lot of the work that I read that is I will say faith-based and not faith-based. And the consensus is this is such a deep patriarchal book that it's so heavy in patriarchy that there's no provision for women and that it's outlived for women. Not so. I want to argue today, or I want to present to you today, not so. There's so many in just this parsha alone. We've gone back before, and we'll see later with the daughters coming in and fighting for wanting their rights to their inheritance. We see women fighting. We see women coming in powerful and making things happen. So I would say not so, not so, because the provisions are made from the Holy One throughout this parsha to protect women. When they say women are the weaker vessel, it's because men overpower things a lot of times, and it's just the way they're created. I mean, that's the part of them was pulled out when we were separated apart. We are more like the Holy Spirit. They have more of that power. It's not that we're weak. It's meaning our minds are weak or anything, but physically we're weak. So sometimes if a man is deciding to overpower something, it can be a little intimidating. So that he made provision for that. So that didn't happen. Even in verse 7, we see in 21:7, it says, and when a man sells his daughter to a female servant, she does not go out as the male servants do. It's different. What he's saying here is this is not like a male servant going out because he is in poverty or because he has a debt to pay, because if he's stolen something or the judges have said you need to go pay that debt, and he couldn't, so he had to put himself into servanthood so he can pay the debt to whoever he's wronged. Okay, not the case. This is not like the men would go out into that. Otherwise, men wouldn't sell themselves into servanthood. So this isn't like the men do it. And the reason is this is an equalizing system. This sale is expected to result in a marriage to either the master or the son. It's to equalize economy. It's so families with no hope could actually sell their daughter to a rich family and give her a chance where she would have not had a chance before. This is a chance for our family to change. And she, as we'll see later, is treated in the same way as a wealthy, distinguished family, a daughter from there. It's required. The Holy One has made provision that it is required she be treated the same way. Her redemption price doesn't change as she ages. As you're reading through, when it's talking about that, when he's saying that he can't say, well, if you want her back, I don't really want her anymore, and she's gotten more valuable because I got her when she was 5, which I think is funny, but I can imagine my 5-year-old who would be worthless. No one wants her as a servant. She just makes all the messes. Anyone else have a 5-year-old who just makes all the messes? I can't imagine selling her into servanthood so that she would actually, but as she would grow, she would become more valuable to that family. So what he is making a provision for here is as she's growing up, I'm not going to let you, if you decide you don't want to marry her, and before she comes to puberty, because the decision had to be made before it could be her virtue could be, would stay intact if possible. And then even then we'll see he makes a provision for that. But this redemption price doesn't change as she ages or as she gets more valuable. The master actually has to assist in her redemption. He has to insist that he cannot accept more than half of the purchase price back for her. So the motivation is not, oh, I'm gonna raise me some slaves and start a slave racket here where I'm just gonna raise up some women and some human trafficking. I'll get a bunch of little girls, raise them up, and then I'm gonna sell them for 5 times what I bought them for. He made provision to care for women in this way. I love God. Thank you. Thank you, Father. Father, thank you for your word and thank you for loving your girls so much. Provision was made that this is not okay. He knew what we would be tempted to do. He knew what could happen. So he made a provision that that couldn't happen. Because I want to remind you throughout this whole thing, you were bought with a price. You were bought with a price. I'm going to ask you right now, however many are watching live or later, would you put the document, I want you to put the verse in there where that's coming from. You were bought with a price. And then the protection continues. You can't sell her to another nation after this commitment is made. So again, no human trafficking. You can't bring her in, father, or you have to keep her in this community because this is a system of equalizing the social system. So that there wouldn't be super rich and super poor. There would be a way to bridge that, and so there would be a social economy happening so that that girl could help actually take care of even her family if needed be. He continues to make things right. And as again, I will repeat, as she grows and as she goes into this family, she cannot be treated any differently than if she were coming from a wealthy, distinguished family. He has to feed her, he has to clothe her, he has to give her opportunity to bring him heirs, to bring children, all those things, as if she were a woman from a wealthy and distinguished family. He's so good. He's so good to his girls. So continue on with making things right. Okay, let's just continue on. This is so far he's saying this is what we do, but we don't even bring things back that we borrow well. Let me repeat what I was just going to say. This thing continues on, how do we make things right? And this is really far, far, far from what we do now. And I'm embarrassed to say it. And I'm embarrassed to say that this is in our community, in our faith-based community across the lines, is that we aren't known for going above and beyond when we borrow things. We aren't known for going above and beyond for bringing things back that we borrow well. We'll keep on going with that. In verse 20, it says not taking care of your servants is not okay. Okay, we're going to skip because I'm going to circle back around to the not returning things borrowed because it says this often. So apparently the Holy One, this is important. But he jumps into this, and this is one of the issues that in chapter 21, verse 20, we start talking about servanthood and slaves. And this is where we just spiral in the many cases that, well, the Bible is, this is such an old-fashioned book that how could it talk about slavery? Can I set a foundation as we have to remember this cannot be equated with the slavery in Africa, with them selling one another and throwing them on ships, and then us bringing, and then here in the United States, so what happened in the Americas with slavery, it cannot be equated to the slavery that happened between the Spaniards and the Indians. It cannot be the same because they were not walking in a community standard. There is a community standard that is being set so that when these other things are mentioned, remember there is a standard, and I'm going to hopefully go deep a little bit better into this. But remember, we're talking about servants that are bond servants, people who've had to sell themselves because of a debt, or they were a criminal and they had to find a way to pay what they had done. If it was a thief, especially thievery is usually the case. It was thievery and they couldn't return or restore the damage that they had caused or they had stolen. This was an opportunity for them to make it right and bring restitution. So that's who we're talking about. We are not talking about slaves. We are not talking about people who had no choice. These are people who made a choice to go into bondservant. Okay? And I would argue, or I would present that even those coming in from other countries that were made to be servants in homes, they didn't have any other way to take care of themselves. So it was an opportunity for them to have a way to care for themselves until they were able to then move out, and they would have a jubilee that they would be able to every 7 years to be set free. Okay, so that has to be the foundation as we walk into this. This is really hard for people to hear. But we have to remember that he's bringing a system that's bringing economical, social, emotional balance to a community. So think about it. When people were brought as slaves, they would have no job. They would have no way to care for themselves, like I said. And the Torah teaches us to treat them well. They were to be treated well. And if it even says here, if you killed them, then you're liable to the death penalty. It is not okay. Now you can go back and read, well, okay, well, if you strike them and they don't die, well, then you are not punished either. We have to remember that would have been so rare. Someone would have been beating someone. They would be accountable because that would not be aligning with Torah, is treating someone that way, another human that way. So I don't know what the reason someone gotten beaten, but they would had to have broken some type of a Torah, some law in Torah. There would have to have been extenuating circumstances, and I'll leave that there. That's not the show for this today. So again, their behavior was held to a way higher standard, and they couldn't punish someone for the reason out of anger. So there had to be something else. So I want to scoot back to something that we just skipped over, and it's in verse 19. It's in 21:19, and I actually sat in this for quite a while, and I came back to it this morning. I was just praying over it and sitting in it and sharing it with my husband. But back to 19, it says, if a man, if he, I'm going to go back 18, and when man strive together, and one strikes the other with a stone or with his fist, and he does not die, but is confined to his bed, if he rises again and walks about outside with his staff, then he who struck him shall be innocent. He only pays for lost time and sees to it that he is completely healed. So if someone's beat up until except unto not just short of life of death, or if they're beat up and they're just confined to their bed and then they get up and they can walk, and the person who beat them up is required to pay for lost wages and make sure whatever the cost is so that they are healed to completion. Okay. If a man is wounded, struck down, and is able to get up, and he walks, then the abuser pays for the lost time and sees that he's completely healed. Man, that is nothing. We don't even know that. We can't even deal with that. But I want to talk to you about something that came to my attention. I feel like the Holy Spirit dropped this in my heart. Luke 10:30. Luke 10:30. I'm actually going to see, did I mark it so I could actually read it? Luke 10:30. He says, and replying, Yeshua said, a certain man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among robbers, who both stripping and beating him went away, leaving him half dead. Okay, we see the correlation. They're in a fight. They stole from him. Not a good thing. But he didn't die. And so what would the law be? The law would be that the people who abused him and stole from him, first of all, would have to give back what they stole from him. They would have to redeem what they had been taken away from him, give it back. Plus, there would have been probably a times 3 or something fee. Plus, they would have had to pay him his lost wages. Plus, they would have had to take care of him or make sure he was cared for until he was completely well. Okay, that would be Torah. That would be the law. That would be the requirements if you did that to someone. So they went away and they left him half dead. So instead, they just left him. And by coincidence, a certain priest was going down that way, and when he saw him, he passed on the other side. All right, it's not my job. It's not just about, oh, there's bodily fluids. I don't even know who I mean, a certain man, I had always assumed that he was Israelite, right? Or he was Jewish. And a certain man, if he's going from Jerusalem to Jericho, you have a priest walks by, ignores him on the other side. I mean, most of you are seeing your felt board when you're a little kid, you know, the story. And then likewise, a Levite also, when he came to the place, seeing him, passed on the other side. Not my job. I didn't do it. Torah doesn't make me have to do this. Also, not supposed to be touching bodily fluids, and he's bleeding. So I'm not touching this. But a certain Samaritan journeying came upon him. Someone you would never expect. Someone who doesn't do it all the right ways. Someone who doesn't worship in the right place. Someone who says it the wrong ways. Whatever. Someone who doesn't look like we think he's supposed to look like. Journeying upon him said, and when he saw him, he came and had compassion on him, and he went to him and he bandaged his wounds pouring on oil and wine, and having placed him on his own beast, put him on his own beast, contaminating it, he brought him to an inn and looked after him. And after going on the next day, he took out 2 denarii, gave it to the innkeeper, and said, "Look after him, and whatever more you spend, I shall repay you when I return." He wasn't the one who robbed him. He wasn't the one who left him for dead. The priest passed him, the Levite passed him, all on the other side. It wasn't his job, it wasn't his responsibility to do that. But when Yeshua is telling this parable, he's referring back to this and saying, not only, remember going the extra mile, not only are you supposed to do this for the people that you hurt, but if you notice someone else is hurt and you notice someone else has done that to them, then it's also your job to do that. Why? Because we're supposed to be like him. And how is that having to do with him? He redeemed us. He binds our wounds. He paid the price. He didn't cause any of our wounds. He didn't cause our afflictions. He didn't cause the things that people have beat us up, or where we've hurt ourselves tripping and falling, where other people have done horrible things to us. He didn't cause that. But he redeems it and he binds it up. And like the Good Samaritan, this was what blew me away today. Like the Good Samaritan, he says, if more is owed, pay for that too. If they relapse and something goes wrong, I'm going to pay for that too. If you've asked for forgiveness and he's come in and he's redeemed you and he's binded your wounds, and then you went off the course and you got beat up or you beat yourself up, he's saying, I'm going to pay for that too. The Good Samaritan is Yeshua. He's walking that out as the example. His whole life is that example. Wow. I'm thinking that we even struggle leaving a note when we open our car door and we actually ding someone else's car. How many of you write the note and say, hey, I dinged your car by accident. Here's my phone number or my email. Here's my email, or here's my insurance company's, here's my insurance information, so that you can get that fixed. I'll tell you what, we just had to have ours fixed, and it required a week in the shop, and it required us to have to get a rental car. And the person didn't leave a note. We had to put it on our insurance. Or how about when we just bring something back? I said we'd circle around. We're bringing something back to someone that we borrowed. We bring back the lawnmower and we mowed our lawn. Do you rinse it out and make sure in case there's weed seeds, like seeds from the dandelions and stuff in there? Do you rinse it out really good? Sometimes people think it's really good. You sprinkle it with some either a really diluted bleach water, but I would say maybe vinegar or something. You spray it to make sure if you have a fungus in your grass or disease in your grass that it's not brought back to their grass. Do we go that extra mile to do that? Do we bring things back better? If you borrow someone's car, do you go and have it washed and then vacuum it out to make sure you bring it back to full of gas? Or you're like, well, they only gave me this much, or well, whatever. They have a lot of money. They won't notice. Or do you give it back to them and it's just, they're like, wow, they're not like everyone else. See, that's how we're supposed to influence that's what this parsha is about, is going this extra, being a people that people go, whoa, nobody does that. Do you risk being taken advantage of? Absolutely. Didn't Yeshua? Didn't he? Do you trust that he's the one providing for you? He's the one caring for you? Or are you worried about being taken for granted about what other people can do? Are you more worried about other people hurting you than you are about him taking care of you? Where is it? What are we bowing to? Verse 25. I'll keep going. There's so much in here. I love this one part. It says, and then you're to repay. We go for the eye, blah, blah, blah. When it says a burn for a burn, a burn for a burn. This isn't death defying. This isn't a mortal injury. A burn for a burn. The Holy One even makes provision. When we cause pain to someone that isn't mortal, or it doesn't last long, it might leave a scar. I have a burn mark right here that left a really bad scar because I reached into the oven and it burned me and it was a huge blister and it got infected and it was bleh. But it's not there anymore. It doesn't hurt anymore, but I still see it. It reminds me, don't do that. He's even making provisions saying, hey, if you cause someone pain that isn't mortal, that isn't a mortal injury, and it's not long lasting, I want you to actually take care of it, because pain for pain. Are we aware of the pain that we cause, whether it's verbal? Do we cause verbal pain? Actions that we do that are pain? Instead, we're like, why are bad things happening to me? Maybe if you ask the Holy One, it's because he's actually doing burn for burn with you. You caused this injury, so I'm giving you burn for burn. I gave you the rules right here. I told you that if you do this, then I will do this. Because to keep us in line, because he loves us like your children. You say, hey, don't go out the window at night. Don't sneak out of the house, because I can't protect you out there. And if you do, you're going to get hurt. And when you go out the window and you do it anyways, and you're like, I don't know why I got hurt. But if you're causing injury to others, ask him, Father, am I doing that? Would you please forgive me? And would you redeem this? I know you did already, so thank you for that. And show me so I can make a course correction, that I don't do it again and put weed killer on the things that I have done. Man, I pray this every day or almost every day. Like, Father, please put weed killer on all the things I did that I don't even know, things I've said that came out of my mouth, out of my flesh, that just like went bleh, out of emotions. Maybe you ask the Holy One, what is causing this injury? What is causing all this to happen to me? You know, a lot of times you realize if things always happen to you, if people always treat you this way, this is always happening. I have to love you and tell you, you're the common denominator. If it always happens to you, I want to challenge you to realize it's not everyone else's fault. There's something that you're doing that you're putting out there, whether your actions, your words, your deeds, something you're doing that's causing everyone to always treat you a certain way. So ask the Holy One to reveal that for you, and he will, and you will grow, and you'll reap good things that you sow instead of continuing to reap bad things that you're sowing. Okay, 21, 29, hopping down. I laugh at this. I'm like, this is harsh. You mean if my ox kills someone else, then they're going to put my ox to death and you're going to put me to death? And then I realized the Holy One's like, you're missing the point. If you're so focused on this isn't fair, fair is not a fruit of the Spirit. It isn't fair, but it's just. And what's just is it's meant to inspire us to watch your stuff. Be responsible. Do the right thing. Make sure your fence is secure so that if your things get out, they don't hurt other people. It's a protection. It's not a punishment. It's to say, hey, if this happens, this is what's going to happen because you're just being rebellious and you're just being, I don't care about other people. You're not caring how your life is going to affect other people. You don't care how your decisions or lack of decision is a decision. Your lack of action is an action. Your lack of choosing is a choice. And now you're like, oh, oops, sorry. Haha. No, he's saying, no, I'm not going to allow my people to walk like that. I want you to make sure things are secure. I want to make sure you take responsibility. I want to make sure that the railings are secure around your house so that someone comes over, they're not going to fall and get hurt. It isn't about you. It's about protecting others. It's about protecting others so that they can see, wow, there's nothing that can come back on you to harm you because you have done everything you can to protect others in your environment. It's like your dog. You keep your dog pinned up if it's a biter, then keep it pinned up so it doesn't bite someone. It's taking responsibility. And notice this isn't a one-time offender. You've been warned, like, hey, it keeps getting out and you're not doing anything about it. It's not like there's no grace in this. So get your stuff together. Okay, guys, let's just be a people that people go, whoa, they're different. They're really different. I was laughing at this also when I was reading it, talking about a hole. If a hole, verse 33, let me switch my page. Verse 33, and when a man opens a pit, or if a man digs a pit and does not cover it, and an ox or a donkey falls in it, the owner of the pit is to repay. He is to give silver to the owner, and the dead beast is his. So I started laughing because I thought, I think this is how OSHA started. I think it started from here. We've been watching some home improvement shows, or the home shows on HGTV, and we always laugh. We know the shows that are not based in California because there's no OSHA showing up and writing up fines. They'll open up some pit, or they'll open up a railing and there's no rail, like the ones done in Arkansas or down in Mississippi. You'll notice there could be a giant pit and they'll be like, oh, you guys walk around that pit, be careful, don't fall in that, because there's no threat of OSHA coming in. If it was in California, there would have to be scaffolding put up to protect the person. There would have to be all this stuff. I don't think that's not always bad. Now, again, with everything, we can go full extreme and it can be not okay. But in the simplicity of it, we are supposed to take every measure to protect others so that they're not hurt because of our negligence. Do you see that? This is saying protect your community from your negligence. 22:5, it says, if your livestock feeds in someone else's vineyard, then you repay it with your best. You pay it with your best, not with, oh, oops, sorry, my dog ate your garden, and then we go grab some cheap stuff and bring it to him. No, you give your best back to them. Why? Because it hurts. It also will remind you to keep your dog in check, or your ox in check, or your animals in check, because you don't want to pay that very often. Let's see, I'm going to scooch through. Verse 6, the arsonist has to repay. And then I just put a note in here that we hear the person is to come before Elohim. And I just want to present to you that term also means coming before the judges, because they believe that Elohim spoke through them. So when they say, you must bring them before Elohim, most often this is referring to the judges. Okay. And then in verse 14, where are we at? Okay. In verse 13, we go straight into, passing this. Verse 14, if you borrow it and it breaks, then you buy them a new one, or you give them the money to do so. It's not just oops, I'm sorry, I borrowed this and it broke. That's the reason why homeowners have renter's insurance. If you don't know, you do have there's a provision in your policy that if you borrow someone's lawnmower and it breaks, you could actually turn it into, you have like a, I don't know, $5,000, $10,000 or something for personal damages, property damage, meaning you damage someone else's property while you have it. There's a provision in your policy for that, so that, I'm wondering, did it come from this? Maybe that it's came down through laws, and it's a provision though, so that you don't know if you break something, and you get homeowners and renters insurance, so that you make sure that you could just call them up and be like, hey, I borrowed this, it broke, and we'll help pay to fix it. This is all about accidental. This isn't intentional. Again, verse 16, we're back in verse 16 is in 21:16, we have a protection again for women. And then in verse 28, do not curse a ruler of your people. That one was hard to hear. Yeah, do not curse the ruler of your people. Well, we won't rewind to election time, or rewind to watching the news and cursing our president or cursing our rulers. We have to trust the Adonai, that he has placed people over us. Thank you, Father, that I don't understand this, but I trust that you have a plan, and I trust that you have appointed this for a reason. If it's nothing else, it's to teach me to keep my pie hole shut. Pay hole. It's to keep that shut. It's to help me learn this lesson, is that your word says that I'm not supposed to curse a ruler or your people. Please forgive me for the cursings that have come out of my mouth against the rulers of our country, because I didn't like them, because I didn't agree with them, because they probably are evil, whatever. It's not even our job to judge. Forgive me for judging the way they handle things. They're in your hands. And I thank you that nothing happens without it going through your hands first. I thank you. What if we turn these into prayers instead of it coming up? This is a commandment, and we're wondering why things are coming against them. That could be a thing he reveals to you, is the way that you judge and you speak against people in authority over you. Okay, chapter 22, verse 2. This is the defend your castle law. If someone and you kill them because they're coming in to steal from you, it's defend your castle law. There's no punishment for that. And also, but if they come in and he gets hurt and he gets caught, the thief has to then pay for what he stole, and then restitution, or be sold to pay for the debt. And we're back to where we started in the beginning. There's a plan for this, so that he can pay restitution. Can you imagine? Everyone just imagine for a minute. Imagine a world. No, imagine that we didn't have jails or prisons, but instead people that were made to be bondservants to pay for their debts. They didn't sit in a cell with 3 hot and a cot, but they were forced to be contributing members of society. They'll come out or we'll say, well, they paid their debts to society. Did they? Really? Because I think that we paid their debt. We paid their pet debt to society with our taxes. Not only were we the victims of their crime, but then we had to pay for their debt. Maybe if they'd be required to work to earn their keep and pay their debt, or we could flip it. He paid for our debt, right? Yeshua paid for our debt. We aren't forced to be bondservants. We're bondservants to him. We're no longer, he says, bondservants, but he calls us family. He calls us brothers and sisters. He calls us co-heirs. No longer are we bondservants because of something we did. No longer do we have to pay the penalty. That's what he abolished. He says, I'm going to pay this price for you. I'm going to pay it for you because I'm the Good Samaritan. If you're hurt because someone else hurt you, or if there's things you did, I'm going to come in and I'm going to pay the price and I'm going to redeem you. Do you see how huge that was? We are so far removed from what he did because we take it for granted, because we live in a system where people take care of things for us. We're not required to live by these standards anymore. But we should be, because when we walk in this and we see what he has done for us, the redemption, the purchase, we then understand how much he's done for us, and the love grows, the connection grows, the understanding of who he is and whose we are. It just develops and it grows. I love that. 22:21, the sojourner. One of the definitions of this is it can also mean a new convert. That Jews are not to look down on them because if they lack that lineage of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or do they? If they lack that because they've grafted themselves in, that they're not, it's Torah. They are not to look down on the sojourner, someone who's coming in and they're new to the faith. Why do we have to give up? The next thing is giving up the first of everything. Of course, we have widows, we have orphans. This is so important. We see Yeshua coming back. What you've done to the least of these, you've done it unto me. He's saying he's referring back to this section of who you need to take care of. Again, back to the prisoner. Did you visit the people in prison? Because I set them free. Are you treating them like they're free? Okay. And then we start talking about having to give the first fruits of everything up. Why do we have to give up the first of everything? Like, I just got it. I've been working on this. I mean, I don't know how many of you have gardens. I want to hear. Say, yes, I have a garden. Yes, or put a one in the comments. And I'll know that means you have a garden. Somewhere, wherever you are, put a 1. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. I have a garden. I've had a garden. I've ever had a garden. My grandpa had a garden, whatever. Put a 1. You know that you've done all this work. You have labored and labored and labored. And then the first crop. I mean, I get so stinking. I have an olive tree right now. It's in my office and I'm looking at it and it's thriving. And little tiny olives starting to come off it. And I'm like, oh, there's olives coming off of my tree. And I'm giggling because I'm thinking that am I tempted to do? I want to partake of that first thing, because why? I don't know if any more are going to show up. I love when we were talking about our garden this morning. What are we going to do? We got to get to it. We got to get things planned. We're going to do another straw bale garden this year. We've done it in the past. It was so much fun. I highly recommend those. We're going to do that this year and I'll send pictures. But we were talking about it, and once you do all the work, you're preparing the soil, you've gotten the seeds in, you've got it from a baby, you're done. And this is no different than animals. You've had chickens, maybe you've had sheep, you have everything, and they have their first baby, and you have to give it away. What if no, I don't have any more? What if that's the only thing this plant is going to produce? It's requiring you to have a faith that you are not the one who provided, and that there will be more, that you are not the Lord of the harvest. You may do those things. He's the one who causes it to rain. He's the one who brings the harvest. So we have to trust. It's a way of us giving up the control that we have, thinking that we're in control of the harvest, that we're in control of anything. He's in control of it. So if I give you my first cute little tomatoes that come off as much as I want to, but I take them and I give them back to you, Father, I'm saying I'm not in control of these coming back again, but you are. So I'm going to give these all to you. I'm going to give it all. And trusting that it may not come back. But I know that you are the giver of all good things. So if you choose not to give it back, then I guess I wasn't meant to have any more this year. Okay, we got just 2 more minutes. Chapter 23. We have people aren't supposed to be outnumbered. We're not supposed to have lynch mobs. We're not supposed to be. I took this to be sharing all around everybody, building up like 7th grade. We're building up our teams against a person because we're supposed to not be tempted to let others hear our side of the story because we just got to pull everyone together. It doesn't mean it's not true, but we're not supposed to share in the strife of all of that. Practically, this is really also about rulings in court, that we're not to pervert the law because of crowd opinion. The other thing, we don't pervert the law in verse 3 because someone's poor. We don't give them a break because, well, they're poor and he doesn't need the money, so let's just make him pay him. No, that's perverting the law. We have to trust the law regardless of what we see, regardless of how we don't weigh out, oh, they're poor, oh, they're no. This is we trust the story, we trust the process. Let me see if I can get through this. Verse 4, do you even have a right if it's about an enemy? Oh, do what is right, even if it's about your enemy. Love your enemy. Oh, no, this is not a new concept. Bless those who persecute you. Impact your sphere of influence. Remember, I want to remind you, you are the influencer in your sphere of influence. And this is the section he's saying, bless those who curse you. We say, he starts talking about Shavuot, we hear Shabbat again, unleavened bread, Sukkot, and then I'm going to squeeze down here in 21, and I'm not going to have time, this is so good. In 21 and 20, 20, he says, see, I'm sending a messenger before to guard you in the way and to bring you into the place where I have prepared. He's sending a messenger. Malachi 3:1 says, see, I'm sending my messenger. He'll prepare a way. Oh my gosh, this is prophetic. Who's the messenger? He's talking to Moshe. Who could he be talking about? We saw another example, John the Baptist coming up. He says, I'm preparing a way, calling for repentance so that the obstacles of sin, you guys, were removed and they could receive the place that had been prepared for them. A messenger was going in front of them to remove the obstacles so that they could receive the place that was prepared for them. John the Baptist came saying, repent, repent, so we would remove the obstacles of sin, of not hitting the mark, of missing the mark, chatat, so that we would be able to receive things that he had prepared to him. And he says, listen to him. Listen to him. The Holy Spirit's calling for repentance so that there isn't anything in the way that keeps you from what he has prepared for you. Don't rebel against him, but listen, guard, protect, and do the things that he has called you to do. Remove the obstacles. Grab onto the promise. Can't wait to see you next week.
זה שיר פשוט, זה שיר קצר, אולי נשמע טיפה מוזר, אבל תדע, כי זו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך. והוא רואה, והוא שומע, ואכפת לו מכל דבר קטן. תדע לך שזו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך.
זה שיר פשוט, זה שיר קצר, אולי נשמע טיפה מוזר, אבל תדע, זו עובדה שאלוהים אוהב אותך.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hugie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.